Was it worth it, Mr. Secretary? That's the question that hit like a thunderclap today. Because Congressman Gregory Meeks didn't just criticize Marco Rubio, he indicted him for betraying his own principles. What we just witnessed wasn't politics, it was a reckoning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Rubio, I'm glad you are finally before this committee. Your testimony actually comes long after the State Department, under your leadership, took actions without required congressional consultation or that were contrary to the law. But I guess it's better late than never. But let me be clear, showing up months after the fact and refusing to stay until every member has questioned you for 5 minutes as entitled to under House rules are not the standards to which we hold the Secretary of State. Mr. Secretary, I've known you for a while, and I respected very much Senator Rubio, even when we disagreed. Senator Rubio was a principled statesman. Secretary Rubio, however, as we've seen in the past few months, is something different entirely. As a senator, you spoke often and forcefully about the dangers of executive overreach. You warned America not to lose its moral clarity or sacrifice democratic principles for short-term gain. Senator Rubio recognized that we cannot allow the executive branch to unilaterally determine the direction of the United States foreign policy without accountability to Congress. Secretary Rubio is doing precisely what Senator Rubio feared, withholding congressional appropriated funds, stonewalling oversight, and acting as if laws passed by this body are optional. Secretary Rubio has presided over the dismantling and destruction of everything Senator Rubio once defended. So although you may be the Secretary of State, the acting head of USAID, the National Security Advisor, the Archivist of America, the empire you have stumbled upon is not one of influence, sir. It is a kingdom of ash. So I ask, was it worth it? Was it worth it to allow the near extension of U.S. foreign assistance and USAID, which Senator Rubio said, and I quote, is a very cost-effective way not only to export our values and our example, but to advance our security and our economic interests? And lie is exactly what this administration has done again and again. Each time Elon Musk and his department of arsonists brag and mislead the American public about massively inflated savings or lie about the programs they have cut and their purpose, they're not telling you about the food that rotted on the shelves while people went hungry, or the medicine that was undistributed to children needlessly suffering, or the trust that was lost by your actions. But I believe you know better, because you've said as much, and yet here we are. In 2022, Senator Rubio warned about the urgent and growing threat posed by China and called for a fully funded State Department and USAID. Senator Rubio wrote that soft power tools and alliances were vital to our national security. And today, Secretary Rubio is here to defend an 84% cut of the foreign affairs budget. How does hollowing out our State Department and dismantling USAID help us compete with China? How does the America Alone budget project American strength? On human rights, the contrast is even starker. Senator Rubio built his political brand on the cause of freedom and dignity. You condemned autocrats in Caracas, Havana, and Beijing for silencing dissent. But Secretary Rubio, he looks the other way when strongmen commit similar abuses. Secretary Rubio even defied a Supreme Court order to facilitate the return of a wrongly detained spouse of an American citizen. And when Senator Rubio became the first Hispanic American to serve as Secretary of State, he made sure to pull the ladder up behind him. In the name of dismantling efforts to making hiring and promotion fair, as you call it, wokeness, you have unlawfully dismantled programs designed to address decades of historical exclusion. These are not political experiments. They were congressionally supported efforts rooted in bipartisan recognition that our diplomatic corps must reflect the diversity and the strength of the nation it represents abroad. These are initiatives that Senator Rubio supported. You replaced experienced career employees with ideologues and political loyalists. Under your watch, sir, America's diplomatic and development corps have suffered the greatest brain drain in history, and America has been weakened and made more isolated by the actions of an administration that has abandoned its allies, cozied up to dictators, and conducted a foreign policy driven not by interests of the American people, but in support of the personal enrichment of the president and his family. And with that, I yield back.
What happened in that room wasn't just oversight, it was an unmasking. Gregory Meeks didn't raise his voice to score points. He raised it to draw a line between principle and power, between who Marco Rubio was and what he's become. Because let's be honest, this wasn't just another policy disagreement. It was the sound of a former ally watching a man lose his moral compass in real time. Meeks invoked Senator Rubio, the one who used to preach about checks and balances, about not letting the executive branch trample over Congress or the Constitution. But Secretary Rubio? He's everything that old Rubio warned America about: defying oversight, ignoring the law, and treating congressional authority like a nuisance. And Meeks didn't let him hide behind the numbers. He pulled those cuts into the light. 84% slashed from the State Department and USAID. Programs gutted that once fed the hungry, healed the sick, and built bridges of trust across the world. These aren't abstract budgets, these are lives. The food that never made it to starving families. The medicine that never reached sick children. That's what Meeks was talking about when he said, "Was it worth it?" Then came the deeper wound, the moral betrayal. The man who once spoke passionately about standing up to dictators now turns a blind eye when strongmen do the very things he once condemned. The man who once celebrated his heritage as the first Hispanic-American Secretary of State now tears down the diversity programs designed to open those same doors for others. It's not just hypocrisy, it's historical amnesia. Meeks was calling out the erasure of everything America claims to represent: equality, diplomacy, democracy itself. And that final image he left hanging, a kingdom of ash, that's not just poetic language, it's a warning. A country that abandons its principles for political loyalty doesn't rise, it burns. What Meeks delivered was less an attack and more an intervention. One man looking across the table and asking another to remember who he used to be. Because in the end, his question wasn't just for Rubio. It was for every official who trades integrity for access, who chooses silence over courage. Was it worth it? Was the title, the influence, the proximity to power worth the loss of everything you once claimed to stand for? That's the question echoing far beyond this hearing, and it's one we all need to keep asking, not just of our leaders, but of ourselves. You're watching Left Lens, where accountability still matters and where truth doesn't flinch. Subscribe, share, and stay aware.